Hi there, my name is Lynna Sutherland, and I'm a homeschool mom of 8 kiddos, ranging in age from high school senior all the way down to kindergartner. And I'm also the owner and the author at Homeschool Latin Help. And today I'm here to tell you a little bit about our favorite high school Latin curriculum and the one that we're currently using in our homeschool, which is called Visual Latin. Now, aside from being a homeschool mom, I'm also a certified Latin teacher. I have a degree in Latin. And before I had kids, I taught Latin in elementary and middle school. And since having kids, I've taught Latin in my own home and at co-ops, every age from pre-K all the way up to high school. So I'm somewhat of a curriculum junkie. I like to try out different Latin curricula. And today I'm here to share with you about one of our current favorites, which is Visual Latin. Visual Latin is a video curriculum by Duane Thomas, and it's hosted on Compass Classroom, where you can get access to all of the videos that go along with the course. There are 2 levels of Visual Latin, 1 and 2, and each of these levels covers about as much grammar as your traditional high school Latin 1 or Latin 2 course. Now, the one thing that's significantly different about Visual Latin from what you might remember taking in high school is that Visual Latin covers only the grammar and vocabulary of Latin. So some high school textbooks might cover things like Roman culture, Roman history, daily life, geography, major battles, things like that. None of that is covered in Visual Latin. It's very streamlined and it focuses simply on the grammar and the vocabulary. Another thing that I really love about Visual Latin is that it's very methodical and straightforward. So all of the lessons follow a very similar pattern. Each lesson is divided into 4 parts, A, B, C, and then a quiz. And part A always includes introduction of a new grammar topic. So Duane Thomas, who does the teaching, will introduce the new topic. He's standing in front of a traditional green chalkboard, demonstrating the language concepts that he's talking about. And there's also usually some kind of animated wording on the screen that also helps you to understand the topic that he's discussing. So after watching the first lesson, there might be some kind of practice or other review to understand the grammar topic that is taught in part A. And then part B involves translating sentences using that grammar topic. And this is one of the things I really love about Visual Latin. The way that Duane Thomas has written the practice sentences is the classic way that we learn language, in little tiny bites. So when you're practicing, for example, learning the difference between a singular and a plural noun, one sentence might say, the man walked into the forest. And then the next sentence might say, the men walked into the forest. So it's 2 sentences that are exactly the same, except the first sentence would have a singular noun and a singular verb agreeing with it. And the second sentence would have a plural noun and a plural verb agreeing with it. And so without having to look up any new vocabulary words or remember any new vocabulary words, you can simply translate the sentence, noticing what's different and being able to build your skills in recognizing those noun and verb endings and whatever it is, whatever the grammar concept is that you're working on. And there's a lot of that in the book. So as we're working on, object of the preposition, it might say, the father is with the boy, the father is with the boys. The father is in the forest. The father is near the forest. So there's just a small change from sentence to sentence, helping you to be able to practice those skills and master the differences and the things that you would need to be looking for without having to figure out a whole lot of new vocabulary words for each sentence. And then part 3 of each lesson, or rather part C of each lesson, the third part, is a translation passage. And these start out pretty simple at the beginning of Visual Latin 1. But the cool thing about it is that Duane Thomas has used the story of the Old Testament as, at the beginning, the inspiration for his translation passages. So, of course, at the beginning of Latin, you have a very limited understanding of grammar and limited vocabulary. And so you're learning about the story of Adam and Eve in the garden. And of course, the passage is not directly from the Latin Vulgate, but it's telling that story in very simple words, just like a first grader might read a very simple story, limited vocabulary and limited concepts that they know. Well, the same thing is true with the way that Duane Thomas teaches Latin. So you're beginning with very simple sentences, but it's a familiar story. And that can help you kind of with context clues to make sure you're understanding what's going on and to kind of check and see if what you're translating makes sense. And then actually, as you go on through Visual Latin 1 and Latin 2, by the time you get to the end, you actually are translating passages from the Latin Vulgate itself. So you build up to the place where you're able to actually translate as we'd say, real Latin. Then after part C, the next thing in each lesson is the quiz. And we have purchased printed copies of the workbooks so that we have everything all printed out for us. And we don't have to do that photocopying or printing for each lesson, but you also can print out tests or quizzes from your PDF that comes with the digital version of the course. And if you have access to Compass Classroom online, in their learning management system, they have created quizzes for every one of the lessons. So when you're finished with a lesson, if you have online access, you can actually go and take the quiz digitally, whether you take it on paper or whether you take it online. All of the questions are multiple choice. So it's pretty easy to quickly check if you're the mom with the teacher edition at home. And of course, if you take it online, then it's going to be automatically graded for you so that you can keep track of your students' scores there. And once you finish a test or a quiz, rather, at the end of each lesson, then you can move on to the next lesson. And all lessons follow that same pattern of grammar topic, sentences, passage, quiz. And the quizzes are at the beginning of Visual Latin 1. They're shorter, maybe 10 to 15 questions. And gradually by about the middle of Visual Latin 1, you build up to 50 questions per quiz. And it continues on that way for most of Visual Latin 1 and 2. And that way, students have a lot of chances to answer questions, and missing one doesn't hurt their score too terribly since there are 50 questions. And like I said, they're multiple choice, so they're quick to score. And it's easy to go back with your student and look at the answer that they chose and talk to them about what would be the right answer if their answer was not correct. Another thing that's super fun about Visual Latin is that Dwayne Thomas is like your classic homeschool dad. He's making dad jokes. He's making goofy comments all the way throughout. And it's not too dorky so as to be cringeworthy, but it's just dorky enough to be funny and to keep the kids' attention. And there have definitely been times where they have remembered a grammar topic or a vocabulary word or something like that because of the funny joke or the silly comment that he made as he was discussing it. And so while the videos are very professionally done, well recorded, high quality, they are not stuffy or dry. They're very, Dwayne Thomas is very lighthearted. He's very engaging. So they're fun and they're interesting to watch, and our kids have really enjoyed that. I have written a full review of Visual Latin 1 and 2 on my blog, and I'll link to that below. It includes everything you could ever want to know about the curriculum, including pictures and inside peeks, links to find all the things you need, details about what comes with the curriculum, details about things you can use to supplement the curriculum, details about what you might want to do when you're done with Visual Latin 1 and 2, as well as some information about how you can try out some Visual Latin lessons for free in your own home to see if you like them and if this might be a good fit for your family. So thanks for listening in as I share with you a little bit about Visual Latin 1 and 2, and I hope to see you around on Homeschool Latin Hill.